Hey there, Sparkrock community. We're excited to introduce two new features for Sparkrock Finance customers who submit and process expense claims. Some organizations need to collect additional information from users submitting expense claims in a more structured way than just throwing everything into a description or comment field. And for expense claims involving mileage rates can change, and employees or administrators needed to keep track of which rate to use when. As you can imagine, this could lead to errors and rejected claims. This release will address both scenarios. In this video, we're going to introduce custom fields for expenses in Sparkrock Finance and mySparkrock and demonstrate the new mileage rate table functionality for expense claims. Let's get started. For reporting purposes, or any other reason really, you might want to track structured information when an employee submits an expense claim. Could be the destination, purpose, who they're traveling with, or any other details. While introducing custom fields that can be tied to an expense type. They can be used in Sparkrock Finance and mySparkrock when creating expense claims. There is some setup that needs to be done to use the new feature. First of all, you may not want everybody to be able to change these settings. So we'll navigate to the user setup page. And there's a new flag called Allow Setup of Expense Attributes. If checked, users can do the custom field setup, and if not, they won't be able to see the setup information at all. The rest of this video will assume that the option is checked for my user. Next, we'll navigate to the Attribute Object Setups page. There'll be a row for expense type with a number beside it, and just select that number. This is where you configure the custom fields, or the technical term in Sparkrock Finance is attributes. So if you wanted to create a new one, you would select New, give it a name, and then select the type. And the type will be either text for a free text entry, you can set a date, it could be a number, or you can select option if you want predefined options for the user to have to select. I'll leave it at text for now. For each attribute, you can select mandatory, which means it's mandatory for the user to fill that out when they use an expense claim that uses this field. And you can select externally available, which means that the custom field will be available on mySparkrock. You can see I already have some custom fields set up, so now it's time to specify how they appear for the user and in which order. So we will navigate to the Purchases and Payables Setup page. We'll scroll down to the Expense Claims Fast tab and open it up. And now there's a new Attributes Setup section where you can select the attributes that you want to select. There can be up to 15 of them. So in the 12th spot, I will select my new custom field that I just created called My Custom Field. And you can see we have travel start date, return date, purpose of travel, location and travel, family traveling, and who are we filing for. So this is telling the system to make these attributes available. And the final bit of setup is we want to tie the custom fields to an expense type so that when the employee selects that expense type, those custom fields will show up. So we'll navigate to the expense types page. And you can see we have expense types already set up. And let's say for this type here, ETE, we'll go Attributes Options and then select Attributes. And here we can select which custom fields we want to fill out when an employee selects this expense type. So let's say we want them to select the start date, the return date, family traveling, and our new My Custom field. Here you can predefine a value if you'd like, and you can make this field mandatory if you hadn't already checked it on the attribute screen as we showed earlier. Select Close. And you can always see the attributes that are associated with this expense type in the Items Attributes fact box. All right, now that the setup is done, it's time to use the custom field. So we'll start here in Sparkrock Finance. I'm creating a new expense claim. I've got the header filled out. Before we get into the custom fields, one thing I'll note is there's a new remittance advice number field. This is something that's also added with this release. This gets populated when the expense claim is paid so that employees can see which claims are associated with a remittance. So now in the expense claim, when I select an expense type, so we'll select this ETE that we just defined. And if I scroll over to the right, you can see that we have our custom fields here as columns. So I'll fill out the start date, the return date, family traveling, which is one of the options I have to select. So let's say I'm traveling with my parents. And if you recall, we made custom field mandatory, and that's just a text field. So I will enter my text. And we can see with this line selected, if we scroll down, we can see that information reflected here on the line attributes fact box. Now over on mySparkrock, I have a new expense claim started. If I scroll down to the expenses section, I can select an unattached expense, but I'm just going to create a new expense here. We'll select that ETE expense type. And now there's a new custom field section when I open that up. You can see we have our start date, our return date, family traveling was an option, so this time I'm traveling with a spouse, and my custom field that we just created, which is a text field, and I can fill that out. And that's the new custom fields in mySparkrock. Now let's take a look at the new mileage rate table functionality. Both Sparkrock Finance and mySparkrock support mileage expense claims, but historically users had to know and manually apply the right mileage rate at the time of submitting an expense claim. Since mileage rates can change and vary by scenario, this can cause errors, inconsistencies, and compliance issues. Well, introducing the mileage rate table. Automating the selection of mileage rates based on effective dates reduces errors, improves user experience, and ensures compliance. So we'll start with the setup. We're here on the expense types page. I'll select this distance expense type, and under the prices menu, there's a new mileage rate list action. And when I select that, you can see I've defined a list of rates with a from date and a to date, and then the rate which is in cents per kilometer. Now, going back to the expense types, if we open up this expense type and scroll down to the expense claims section, there's a new option here that says use mileage rate table. So when you select that for an expense type, that's telling it to use that mileage rate table we just defined instead of any unit amount that may have been filled out. Now that the setup is done, it's time to use the mileage rates, and we'll start in Sparkrock Finance. So I've created the expense claim. We will go and we will select distance, and you can see it's pulled in the rate from our mileage rate table. And if we add a second line here for distance, and we use a different date, you can see it's pulling in the rate from that May 2025 date. On mySparkrock, it's similar. I'm here in an expense claim. We'll create a new expense. We'll select that distance. And you can see it's automatically pulled in the correct rate for this date. However, if I change the date to something else, it's automatically pulling that in from that July to September date range. And that's a wrap on this release. With Expense Custom Fields, you can collect exactly the information you need. No more unstructured comment boxes. And with mileage rate tables, rates will be accurate automatically, so no more guesswork or errors. Check out the release notes for all of the details and let your customer success manager know what you think. Thanks so much for watching.